Man, it's cold out here today, but we're back at the engine, and like I said in the last video, this engine is completely froze solid, locked right up. And that is a problem because I need to turn the crankshaft to get the transmission off, because unlike a regular transmission where you can just slide the torque converter out, this one you actually have to unbolt the flex plate, and then after you get the transmission off, then you can take apart the fluid coupling and take that off. Unfortunately, this doesn't work this way, so I'm going to need to spin the crankshaft, I'm pretty sure. And to do that, I'm probably going to have to tear this thing down and see if I can free it up. But one thing I'm going to do before I tear into the actual engine is pull the inspection plate off down there and just have a look at that flex plate and everything, and see if by some miracle I can get in there and actually get all four of the bolts off, or nuts, I guess they are. See if I can get those off, and if I can, then I don't have to tear this thing down, which would be nice. But the only way to know for sure is to get in there and do it, so rip that off and see what we're working with. Alright, I've got the inspection plate off and the starter. So much crud on it I can stick my screwdriver in it, but I got that out of the way, and we can kind of see what I'm dealing with here. Now I can only see two bolts that I can get to. That one right there I have to take off, and then there's one I can see from the other side, but there's four in total I have to remove, so I'm gonna have to spin this thing over to get to those, unfortunately. So I guess I'm tearing this thing apart. But before I get too far into it, I forgot these things had a drain plug. Hey now, come back here. There we go. Yeah, I forgot these things had a drain plug in the transmission pan, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that, drain out the transmission fluid, because I got to do that anyway, and make sure there's no water or metal bits or anything in there. I haven't seen any evidence of it, but probably a good idea just to check and make sure before I go too crazy. Even if this transmission is no good, I can save that tail shaft and hopefully the bell housing, put it on that other transmission, and we should be good. But we'll get that drained, get that vintage transmission fluid out of there, and go from there. Alright, I've got the transmission fluid pretty much drained out. It's a little dark, but I don't see any burnt flakes of anything or any metal shavings in there, so I think we're going to be alright. It could just be discolored because it's probably 50 years old, but I went ahead and started tearing down the engine here, and interesting things are to be found. I don't know how well you can get it on camera, but the entire top of the head here and the rocker arms and everything are coated in silver. So I'm wondering if this engine didn't get blown up, and that's why it was parked way back in 1974. As you can see, I pulled the plugs out, and they have been rusting for a long time. This end plug here from this hole, it's all silver, so I wonder if that's the piston that melted down. Get a light in here and show you how bad it is. Yeah, you can kind of see how that's silver, but inside the pistons, I mean, it's just, there's like rust dust coming out of that one. They are absolutely filled with rust. This thing's locked up solid. Looks like it was at the bottom of a lake. So I'm going to have to tear it all the way down just to see if I can potentially move it. I'm sure the bottom end is pretty well locked up too, considering all the water I drained out of it. But one way or another, we're going to get that transmission off. An option I do have of last resort, I suppose, is unbolt the engine and transmission, and then I can basically pry them apart and bend that flex plate enough to get to the bolts. I don't really want to do that though, because that flex plate alone is like 150 bucks. I have another one. I don't really need this one, but it would be nice to have a spare, or maybe sell that one and make a little money back. But yeah, this is going to be a job, I think. She's pretty well rusted inside there. Alright, we are making progress. As you can see, I got the valve covers all off, I got the rocker shafts off, I've got the water pump off the front off, got the intake out of the way, nasty under there. I got the exhaust manifold off on that side, and this side there was one bolt that I rounded the head off, so that's just going to have to stay on, I guess. No big deal. It's just going to be a lot heavier when I take them heads off. I also got the oil pan out, and it's pretty nasty in there, but it's better than I thought it was. It looks like the water line was below where the crankshaft was, so I should be able to undo the rod cap bolts, and if I can undo those, I hopefully can pound the pistons up from the bottom and get them out of the way of the crankshaft and maybe spin the thing. We'll have to take the heads off and see what the cylinders look like on the inside. I'm not looking forward to what they're going to look like, but maybe we can clean them out enough to slam the pistons up out of the way. Hopefully, cross my fingers. But let's go ahead and zing those bolts out on the head and pull the head off and really see what it looks like in there. Alright, I should have all the bolts out of the head. Let's see if I'm strong enough to pick up that thing out of there and see what we're looking at in the cylinder. I don't imagine it's going to be good. Oh boy. Even stinks. Yeah, I think they blew up this motor. Maybe. Or is that just one of the faces of the valves rotted away? That's pretty nasty. Oof. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Yikes. And you can see in this one it's just a bunch of silver sludge crap in there. I don't know what exactly that's all about, but nasty. I'll see if I can clean some of that out, and maybe I'll be able to get the pistons to move at some point. Definitely won't be right away though. Well, I got the other side off, and it's no better. That one's still full of ice. And here's what I saw before in the other cylinder. I thought it was the whole head of the valve was broke off, but it's just the face of the valve rusted away. Made a nice little rust cylinder there. A couple of them in there. Yeah, that's pretty nasty. Ah, new set of rings and dingleberry hone. Should be running by this weekend. But I think I'll have to clean all that stuff out and wait for that ice to melt. Should be warming up, I think, this weekend, hopefully enough to melt that. Otherwise I'll have to put the heater on it and get it to melt. But clean that out and see what I'm working with, and see if it's in any way possible to hammer them pistons out from the back. Maybe I can do it. I gotta try anyway. Alright, I got pretty much most of the random bits off the top. The fuel pump and that thing and the distributor and all that. I went ahead and I rolled it over, and now I should be able to get to all the rod cap bolts. As you can see, they're relatively rust free compared to like the oil pump there. So hopefully I'll be able to get those loose and maybe knock a few of the pistons down, but I'll probably end up having to take the entire crank still bolted to the transmission and take that out, separate that from the block. So go ahead and start stripping it down and see if we can't get this thing out of here. Well, alright, took a bit of work, but I got all the rod caps off and the main caps off, and I pounded out all the studs from the rods there, and went ahead and hammered a bunch of them pistons out. I got 2 or 3 of the pistons all the way out, and then the rest of them I just got to move. And I was able to turn the crank enough to get to at least one of these bolts, so I'm going to go ahead and take that nut off, and I think I'm going to have to hammer in a couple more of these pistons, a ways more, so I can turn it to get to the last bolt. It's down around here somewhere, I think. So yeah, I think I can hammer out those 2 pistons and get enough out of the crankshaft to reach that last nut, and then we can flip the thing over, and I'll set it on the ground and hook up the cherry picker to the engine, to the block, and then just slide the transmission out. Easy as pie. Well, alright, I finally got all the bolts out of there. Got all the pistons out except for that one. I didn't need to remove it, so I figured why waste the effort. I got a pile of busted pistons here, and yeah, it was an effort. I probably spent off and on the last 2 days just hammering on pistons and stuff like that to give you an idea of how much I was hammering. This is my rod I was hammering with, and that end of it started out looking more like that end of it. Even that one's starting to mushroom, but yeah, there was a bit of hammering. But I got it all done, and I went ahead and put the front and the rear main caps back on to hold the crankshaft in when I flip this thing over and pull the transmission off. So really all I got to do now is roll this thing over. I'll set it on the transmission on the ground. I'll pick up the engine block a little bit with the cherry picker here and take out the bell housing bolts, and I should be able to just slide that transmission off, and then yeah, should be good to go. Well, finally, the engine and the transmission are apart from each other, and I managed to save my flex plate here. Always good to have a spare, or I could sell it and make a little bit of money back, whatever. But I didn't damage it, and I didn't damage, more importantly, the bell housing, because I need one of those. So it was a lot of work, but I think it was worth it. I really wish they would have just made this thing slide out, but the way it works is you got to take that whole flywheel off and then disassemble the fluid coupling inside to actually remove it. So I don't think there was any good way around that other than breaking stuff. So got that out. I think what I'll do is probably push this thing back outside, since I don't need any parts off it now. Make a little room in here and scrape off some of the crap off that transmission, clean it up a little bit, and then I'm going to have to clean up my shop. Looks like an engine exploded in here. But yeah, that'll take a while, so at least I got it apart.